And now we talk with a gentleman I've never had the opportunity to speak with, Representative Ryan Williams out of Cookeville. He is a Republican, District Number 42. He is chair of the Appropriations Subcommittee, and he is the bill sponsor of the legislation that would allow for, under certain circumstances, teachers or staff members to be armed in our public schools. And Mr. Williams joins us today on the Matt Murphy Show. Representative, good afternoon. Good to speak with you.
Good afternoon. Great to speak with you for the first time. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's absolutely a pleasure to do so. Let's start with this very emotional bill regarding teachers and guns in our school systems. I mean, obviously, a lot of emotion spilling over in the Senate yesterday. I understand that emotion, but I also understand that we have to give every tool to our public education systems available to us to help protect our youngsters in those school systems. Walk us through your decision to sponsor the legislation, and how good do you feel about it in the House?
Well, as you know, last year the Senate closed the judiciary early, and so it wasn't able to be heard in the Senate. But the House acted on this bill last year, and because judiciary was closed, I laid the bill on the desk, so it currently sits on the desk in the House floor, and the bill in its current form is very similar to two minor technical changes between the Senate version and the House version. And so he'll be sending it over on message, and we expect to take the bill up later. The bill originated from the ideas that came out of the Parkland shooting, Stoneman Douglas school shooting from years ago. And, of course, I was here in the legislature when we passed Campus Carry for higher education campuses across the state, and the TBI College Campus Report showed an overall reduction of more than 20% in every category of crime across our institutions of higher learning after passage of that bill. This bill seeks to do similarly what happened in Campus Carry. However, it has five very important ingredients as it relates to how it's done, so that there's a higher level or a higher standard of care as it relates to security of our students and faculty that are there. But ultimately, the idea came from the peace officer idea that came out of that committee some 18 months after the shooting in Florida. And so what makes this bill a little bit different than the original bill that I had several years ago, it allows for 40 hours of training for an individual who chooses to volunteer to do this, a mental health background check, an enhanced carry permit, fingerprint identification, and then the approval of the local law enforcement agency who has the MOU of understanding with that local school system. So the bar is very high. In college campuses across the state, about 3.13% of faculty and staff carry on campuses today with no incidents in more than 5 years. This bill seeks to mirror that, except the standard is much higher. I expect a very low number, most of which would be in rural districts where hiring SROs or law enforcement agents in order to do this, because as you know, we funded an SRO in every school in Tennessee last year or year before last, and what we found that there's still more than 400 schools across the state that don't have an SRO. Happens to do with their ability to find law enforcement agents. What this would do was create this unbelievable standard that law enforcement agencies have worked with me to help modify, so that we can protect students and also, more importantly, create what I think is the most important part of this legislation, and that is a deterrent. As you may not know, the reason why this bill is so important is that it allows every school system in the state to put a sign in front of the school that says, under Tennessee Code Annotated, there may be someone in this school that's carrying a weapon that is trained and pass the mental health background check, and the law enforcement agency knows about, therefore creating a deterrent in and of itself. As you know, in most active shooter situations in schools, the first person that is addressed by the active shooter is usually the SRO, which is typically in only 60% of our schools, one individual.
Representative Ryan Williams is with us discussing legislation in front of the House of Representatives that would give teachers or other staff members the ability, under certain circumstances, as he just drew out, to arm themselves to help protect their students. Two aspects of this. One, I've talked to some of my friends within law enforcement I've spoken to some of my friends in security consultation services, and they say that it's a tricky thing to keep the secret nature of the individual teachers that are armed as the rubber meets the road. Is that any part of your discussion? And I know opponents of the bill are seemingly angry about the fact that there would be no parental notification. It seems to me that that's an important component of this. You just kind of addressed that, Ryan, that it's important that we don't announce or flag necessarily those staff members, faculty members, or teachers that have been properly trained and are concealed carrying, because that would put a target on their back.
That is correct. Also, I think one of the things that sometimes gets lost in this, which is different than the higher education campus carry, is that the law enforcement agency who has that memo of understanding has folded these people into their active shooter plans as it relates to what happens. And so, a lot of times, when you read of what happened in these other school shootings, there just wasn't an opportunity. Sometimes students get trapped and can't get out of the school, and this would give that person the opportunity to communicate with law enforcement and assist in protecting kids. These people, it's not the intent of any law enforcement agency that I have talked to that would say that they would encourage or even train someone to confront the shooter. It's mainly about protecting kids who may or may not be trapped.
Representative, I would expect, considering activity as it went in the Senate, I know the House is a different body, and obviously with a different membership, do you expect any trouble seeing this to the floor and seeing it passed and getting to the governor's desk?
Well, always. There are 99 members. We go into the House chamber with, knowing that there's going to be a challenge as it relates to the votes. I think as it relates to whether or not the bill, I'm comfortable. I wouldn't lift it from the desk to have a vote on it if I didn't feel like that we had the support to do that. I think we do have the support to do that. I think when I talk to particularly my members in rural areas across the state, it's something that they are drastically needing, and those in urban areas who wish to have the ability to create a deterrent. As you know, deterrents are probably one of the most invaluable things that we have as it relates to these situations. I think it's really important. I just realized, however, I didn't answer your question about the individuals previously, and I think I'd like to address that. The memo of understanding under the current tenant, the reason why the dean or the president of universities were not notified is because those people who chose to carry, we didn't want it to become an issue of hiring and firing employees because they were willing to volunteer to do this and to go through the rigorous training in order to do so. And that applies here. It's not that the students wouldn't be notified. The principal and the director of schools would be notified as under the current tenets of the bill. So it's not that they would not be known, but the law enforcement agency would know, and the principal of the school in which someone would be there would know. Their identity would be preserved in that way, but there would be the acknowledgement that there would be somebody and that they have been trained in active shooter training and have their training folded into what the plan is.
Has this at all over your years as a representative in the General Assembly, has it been a frustrating process? Because it feels to me, and obviously we're all sensitive to those individuals and groups that have been directly affected by gun violence, and the most prominent one of late was the tragedy that happened at Covenant School. But it feels like we all come to the table of discussion and everyone agrees that we want to do everything within our abilities from a constitutional perspective, obviously, to protect our children. And then when folks like you, Representative, or Matt Murphy or whomever bring up things that don't have to do with restricting gun rights, the other side just starts screaming and they don't want to talk about it. That it feels like there are groups that, unless you're talking about restricting gun rights, they don't want to have any of these discussions. It's a bit frustrating for us on our side of it. Does it ever frustrate you?
Of course, it's frustrating, but particularly in legislating things that are very sensitive like this. I've had an opportunity to talk to some of the Covenant parents. I've gotten emails from some of the Covenant parents. That was a tragedy. I have relationships with a lot of those in Tennessee Voices, and they are seem to be reasonable people. Every person that I've been able to sit down and talk with about the tenets of the bill, are much more comfortable after communicating with me individually about it. I think sometimes the most frustrating part is the speak or the dialogue about something that's simply not factual. And so a lot of times you're having to undo someone's preconceived notions about a bill or an idea or a theory, and never really get to the opportunity to discuss what the actual bill does. And I think that's always been a challenge in legislating, particularly in any sensitive matter.
Representative, while we have you on the line, I'm curious your thought. I mean, the biggest piece of legislation before the General Assembly is clearly the Education Scholarship Bill. We understand that there remain differences between the Senate version and the House version. As much as you know, where are we concerning those conversations, and how hopeful are you to expect that this will come to the House floor for a vote?
Well, that's the one thing that I've never got when I got my orientation here in the House floor was a crystal ball or a magic wand. And unfortunately, I have not been as actively involved in the education scholarship because it's not in any of the committees that are before me. And
Sure.
So I know that the House and Senate are in two diametrically different positions than they currently are. I know that there's a lot of work ahead. As I originally talked to the administration about the bill, I felt like that they would get a better understanding or a better realization of the tenets of the bill if they were in two separate bills. I think if that were the case, you'd end up with one for sure, maybe both. But the challenge is the how and not the what as much.
Representative, a good opening conversation. I look forward to the next one. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with us talking primarily about the bill before the House, or soon to be before the House, regarding arming our teachers to protect our children. We appreciate that, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
All right. Look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Take care. There's Representative Ryan Williams joining us. He's out of Cookeville. He is also the chair of the Appropriations Sub and obviously a member of the House of Representatives in the state of Tennessee. We'll take a few of your telephone calls coming up in just a moment. Look, actors, and by actors, I mean interested parties in the conversation regarding our school systems, will say that they want to do everything in our power to protect children. Obviously, everything in our power isn't possible in as much as we believe in the rule of law, and we cannot violate the rights of one to attempt to protect the rights of another. That's not the way we operate. In a freedom-loving society, and I would like to believe that we still are, we have to balance security against freedom, always recognizing that if you achieve 100% security, you're going to lose freedom. And so those that believe in individual liberty and freedom of association, freedom of movement, and these types of things guaranteed by our Creator and certified by the Constitution of the United States, those of us who believe in those tenets recognize that we have to be right 100% of the time, and the bad guys only have to be right once. That said, I'm sad to report I don't believe that we're dealing with honest people. If they tell me they're willing to listen to anything that can protect children, everything that can protect children, then why are you not listening to this legislation? Why are you not considering this legislation? Why are you dismissing this hat in hand? Why are you acting as performance artists in front of television cameras, which I'm told was happening yesterday? I mean, I'm sad to report it, but I was told by eyewitnesses in the Tennessee Capitol that you had individuals on against the Senate legislation that were, I'm trying to be delicate here, that were prepping themselves to go on camera. In other words, making sure that they were presenting themselves in the appropriate emotional space to go on camera. You want me to put it down there where the goats can graze on it? They were cry prepping. This was an eyewitness to the event that told me of this. They were cry prepping. Because they're not, well, I don't want to suppose I know what they are or are not bringing to the table. I would say this, that anyone that opens with, I'm willing to talk about anything, and then shuts this down, without fully explaining exactly why, I don't believe you're an honest actor.